Near Vienna, a nobleman lost something small, a veil. Carried away by the wind and gone without a trace. Years later, it was found again, in a place no one expected. And because of that discovery, an entire monastery was built. The story takes place just outside Vienna, in Klosterneuburg, a town that still exists today. And at its center stands the Klosterneuburg Abbey, founded in the 12th century. According to tradition, its origin is tied to this very event. Or at least, that's what the legend says. Welcome to Of Mountains and Men, where we explore documented myths, mysteries, and legends from the Alps and beyond. Tonight, we stay just outside Vienna and look at a story where history and legend are almost impossible to separate. The central figure in this story is Leopold III of Babenberg, a real historical figure. Born in the late 11th century, Leopold became Margrave of Austria and is remembered today as one of its most important early rulers. He would later be canonized as Saint Leopold, the patron saint of Austria. His wife Agnes of Waiblingen was equally significant. She was the daughter of Emperor Henry IV of the Holy Roman Empire. Their marriage was not just personal, it was political. A union that connected the Babenberg dynasty with the imperial Salian line, which in medieval Europe was not a small detail. It meant influence, legitimacy, and power. Together, Leopold and Agnes became central figures in shaping what would later become Austria. Which makes what happens next all the more unexpected. According to the legend, Leopold and Agnes were standing on a hill overlooking the Danube. A place of open land, wind, and wide views across the valley. At some point, Agnes removed her veil, a light piece of fabric, easily caught by the wind. And that is exactly what happened. A sudden gust carried it away, out of reach, gone. Now, on the surface, this is a small event. Nothing more than a lost object. Something that could happen to anyone. But in the context of the time, a veil was not just an accessory. It carried meaning. Social, symbolic, even religious. And its loss, at least in the story, becomes something more. Because according to legend, Leopold made a vow that if the veil were ever found again, he would build a monastery at the place of its discovery. The veil was not found the next day or the next week. Time passed. Years, according to tradition. The memory faded, as small events tend to do, until one day the veil was discovered again. Not nearby, not where one might expect something carried by the wind to land, but caught in the branches of an elder tree, in a location that would later become the site of Klosterneuburg Abbey. The detail matters, because in medieval symbolism, the rediscovery of a lost object, especially after such a long time, was rarely seen as a coincidence. It was interpreted as a sign, as guidance, or, depending on belief, as divine intervention. Leopold, according to the story, kept his vow, and at that location he founded a monastery. In reality, Klosterneuburg Abbey was established in 1114, a date that aligns closely with the lifetime of Leopold and Agnes. The monastery became one of the most important religious centers in the region. It was later entrusted to the Augustinian canons. And over time, it grew in influence, not just spiritually, but politically and culturally. This is where the story and history begin to overlap in a meaningful way. Because while the veil legend cannot be proven in a literal sense, the foundation itself is very real. And the timing is not invented. Like many medieval foundation legends, the story provides an explanation, not necessarily of what happened, but of how people understood what happened. Why here? Why at that moment? Why by this ruler? The legend answers those questions in a way that history alone does not. The story does not end with the founding of the monastery, because according to tradition, a piece of Agnes' veil is still preserved today, kept within the abbey as a relic. Now, whether this fragment can definitely be traced back to Agnes herself is uncertain. But uncertainty is not unusual. Medieval relic culture operated differently from modern historical verification. Objects were valued not only for their proven origin, but for what they represented. Faith, memory, continuity. And in that sense, the veil becomes more than a lost object. It becomes part of the identity of the place itself. Foundation legends like this appear throughout medieval Europe. Monasteries, churches, and cities often carry stories explaining the origin. Not as precise historical records, but as meaningful narratives. They connect the physical world to belief, to intention, to something beyond coincidence. And they often follow a pattern: a loss, a rediscovery, a decision shaped by what is interpreted as a sign. In that way, the Veil of Agnes fits into a broader tradition. But its strength lies in its simplicity. A small object, lost to the wind, found again, and remembered. Today, Klosterneuburg Abbey still stands just outside Vienna. Vibrant, visible, real. Visitors walk its halls without necessarily thinking about how it all began, or how people once explained its existence. But the story remains in a small piece of fabric, quietly attached to the place. A reminder that history is not only built from events, but from the meanings people give to them. Or at least, that's what the legend says.